So are you, oh, Charlie, this will be DeMille High sign. So this is, all right. Well, good morning. Good morning. I see that you are the hearty souls coming out of the less than lovely June day, but I'm glad you're here. And we're really very glad to be able to welcome back Michelle Alex from the Registry of Motor Vehicles, who's been out with us before, but always brings new information regarding new strategies for safe driving and information about rules that have changed and some of the other aspects of information that we sometimes go looking for. Maybe some information on handicap placards, which we've been doing a movie business in.
Yes.
So thank you so much. We have coffee still and water and some refreshments, so
Great.
we'll have time to share some refreshments too, but I'm going to let Michelle just start.
Thank you.
We're going to close down.
Okay, thank you so much, Colleen, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for making the trip out on not an optimal driving day, right? So yes, as Colleen mentioned, my name is Michelle, and I work for the Registry of Motor Vehicles. And I'm going to talk to you about safe driving, give you some tips on how to keep yourself safe, how to be an even better driver than you already are. And as Colleen mentioned, some information on handicap placards, the do's and the don'ts in terms of parking, for handicap parking. And I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the changes at the Registry of Motor Vehicles. So, and thank you so much to the Georgetown Council on Aging and the cable company, which is taking this message out to folks who can't get out, but still like to learn new things. So that's terrific. So the research that has been done shows that we tend to drive better as we age. But up to a certain point, they have to clarify it. The researchers throw that little kicker in, up to a certain point. And what the statistics are telling us is that around the age of 75 years old, the crash rate for mature drivers tends to increase. And that's cause for concern because the crash rate is increasing while the number of miles being driven tends to decrease. So there is, as I said, some cause for concern. But we all know that age is a number. And I cannot stand here and say that each and every one of us, once we turn 75, are going to get into a crash. That's not true. That's not true. But it does tend to be a trend that mature drivers have a very low crash rate up until around age 75, and then that very low crash rate begins to take an upturn. And it continues to increase, unfortunately, more significantly around the age of 80 as well. And it continues to increase. So that's, food for thought. There are so many things, though, that we can do as drivers to keep ourselves safe. And mature drivers, as I mentioned, have that very low crash rate for a reason. Mature drivers tend to regulate themselves. They tend to put self-imposed limits on their own driving. Mature drivers have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. They tend to be very patient drivers, more so than the younger drivers. They tend to not be talking on the cell phone while driving because they know that that is a major distraction and that can cause a collision. What seems to be driving the crash rate up for mature drivers is more the effects of medical conditions on a person's driving. Because as we live longer, we may tend to develop a medical condition which may affect our driving. Or we may be prescribed a medication that may cause side effects that then may cause us to get into a collision, or may alter our driving, or may impede our driving, our safe operation of a motor vehicle. So that's the reason for the upturn in the number of collisions. Medical issues that go unchecked, or medications that may have certain side effects that affect a driver. So let's start with medical conditions. First of all, there are 4 functional impairments that tend to cause collisions. One functional impairment is a decrease in vision or changes in vision. In particular, as we grow up, we tend to lose depth perception. And when you think about it, when you're out there driving, the driver is really relying on his or her depth perception to determine how far away is that car from me. If I'm trying to make a turn, do I have enough space for myself to make that turn before that car gets too close? I'm determining how far away is the plaza or the street that I'm going to turn into. I'm using a lot of depth perception. How far away is the pedestrian or the crosswalk? And I need to react to those potential hazards. So depth perception tends to decrease. Peripheral view also tends to get smaller. So our peripheral view is decreasing as well. Our light perception also tends to decline as we grow up. And the Institute of Vehicular Safety did a study on mature drivers. And they really wanted to look at 2 key factors that cause the mature driver crash rate to increase. And one was, of course, vision. The second key factor is reaction time. But let's start with the vision part of it. The Institute of Vehicular Safety measured light perception. And how much light perception do we see as we grow up? And what they found is that at age 20, our vision was at its peak. Okay, so at age 20, our vision was at its best. And every 13 years, most of us need twice as much light to see. So that's really amazing. So again, starting at age 20, we had very good vision. Most of us, of course there are always exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, age 20, best vision we're going to have. 13 years from that point, so around age 33, we needed 2 times more light to see. It wasn't a big deal. Didn't make a big difference in our lives. Another 13 years go by, and we're reaching our mid-40s, and we now need 4 times more light to see. And that's when most folks begin to notice their nighttime driving may become a little bit more difficult than it used to be because they are seeing less light and they really need about 4 times more light to see clearly at night. So ask, if you've got adult children and they're maybe mid-40s or approaching 40s, ask them, how do you find your night driving to be or your night vision? And chances are they'll be saying, geez, I've noticed I'm not seeing as well at night. And that's why you've also noticed a lot of the auto manufacturers are installing brighter headlights in their vehicles. And that is because the baby boomers are growing up, and many of them might still be working, having to drive at night, and they do need more light from their headlights because they are noticing a decrease in their light perception. So if you keep doing the math, by the time a person reaches 60 years old, they may need 8 times more light to see at night. That's a big difference. So that's why most folks say, I'm going to limit my nighttime driving, or maybe even eliminate it altogether if you have the luxury to do that. And that's a smart thing to be thinking about. If you find that you're having difficulty seeing clearly at night, try to avoid nighttime driving, right? And that's what mature drivers tend to do. They tend to regulate themselves. they tend to put that self-imposed limit on their driving and say, hey, I'm going to go out and do all my errands and visit with my friends and go get what I need during the day, so I don't have to be risking my safety by having to drive at night. One more change, well, many other changes in terms of eyesight, but one that tends to wreak havoc on nighttime vision is we're becoming more sensitive to bright lights. So we're losing light perception, and yet our eyesight may be becoming more sensitive to bright lights. So it's really a double whammy when you think about nighttime driving, and it's a real good reason to maybe limit the nighttime driving. So other ways, what are some other ways that you have regulated yourself when it comes to your driving, or maybe changed your driving habits over the years to keep yourself safe? You can just shout it out. I know you do this and you probably don't even think about it, but...
I don't know what word she said.
He can't hear you.
Okay, okay. Well, I said, how have you changed your driving?
I had a hearing aid and I left it somewhere.
How have you changed your driving?
Yeah.
Pardon?
How have you changed
How
your
have you
driving?
changed your driving over the years?
How have
I
I
don't
changed my
drive much
driving?
at night.
Not driving much at
Only when
night.
I drive in town.
Good for you, good for you. So limiting your driving to maybe sticking to familiar roads, to local roads.
Yeah,
Great.
To my daughters back home.
There you go.
To church.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's another very common way to limit our driving and keep ourselves safe. To not venture out in unfamiliar territory, really. To not go driving across country or trying to find some place that we're not familiar with. So sticking to familiar roads, that's great, that's great. Avoiding nighttime driving. Maybe going out and doing the errands after the morning rush. You know, waiting until maybe 10 o'clock or so to go out and do your things you need to do. And maybe avoiding the evening commute. That's another way that folks tend to regulate their driving. So there are lots of ways. There are really lots of ways to keep ourselves safe. And that is what keeps the mature driver crash rate so low. It's the self-imposed limits on their own driving. So we talked about vision changes and how many different changes in vision can affect our driving. And we experience so many changes. In addition to the decreasing light perception, the increasing sensitivity to light, the decrease in depth perception, for some of us visual acuity may decline. And visual acuity is our ability to distinguish one object from another. So in terms of driving, as we're driving, it would be my ability to distinguish the curb from the pavement, or the lane markings, to be able to tell, decide or to identify one object from another. And that's so important. And that's actually one of the most important things that we check at the Registry of Motor Vehicles. When a person comes in to the Registry of Motor Vehicles to renew his or her license, we give them an eye test. And visual acuity is absolutely one of the pieces to that eye test. So is peripheral view. We need to check peripheral view. And the vision standards here in Massachusetts are really a person, in order to be visually safe to drive, so just in terms of vision, we need to have at least 20/40 in one eye, with or without corrective lenses. So in order to be, to drive safely in terms of vision, I need to have at least 20/40 in one eye, with or without corrective lenses, and 120-degree peripheral view. Because really, when we're driving, we're not just focusing right here in front of us. We are also getting the big picture. And that is so important for a driver to do, to always get the big picture. Open up that field of view by turning and looking to see what is to my left, what is to my right. Is there a pedestrian in the crosswalk, or is there a car that I see trying to pull out from a side street? So as we grow up, our useful field of view tends to get smaller, and that may wreak havoc on a driver. If my useful field of view might be just right here, I am missing so many important pieces of driving over here, over there, behind me. So always remind yourself to get the big picture when you're driving. The ways to compensate for a smaller field of view are really to be turning our heads. So there are absolutely certain exercises that are very beneficial to mature drivers. And it's nothing rigorous. It's not like you have to go out and go to the gym to do these exercises, but there are really 4 key exercises that MIT recommends that older drivers, mature drivers do. And one of the exercises is turning one's head. That is a very important motion to be able to do. So anytime you're home, you've got some time, you're sitting down, you're in a comfortable location, or maybe even if the Council on Aging provides an exercise class or a walking group or a stretch and tone, Colleen, they do, terrific. Well, I would really encourage folks to come to the exercise class because it's proven that folks who exercise and keep moving their bodies are the ones who are going to be driving better and longer, okay? It's a direct correlation. So keep moving, keep coming to the great programs that the Senior Center and the Council on Aging offers here in Georgetown. And if you live in other communities, contact your Senior Center, your Council on Aging, because those exercise classes will help you be a better driver. So you get the picture. Being safe to drive encompasses physical ability and mental ability. And exercise is a great way to improve physical and mental ability. It's proven. And I mentioned MIT. If you have some time to research MIT's Age Lab, it's a fantastic department over at MIT in Cambridge. And if you use the internet, all you just have to do is do a search for MIT's Age Lab. I did bring one of the brochures that they have produced with help from the Hartford Insurance Company. And it's called We Need to Talk. And everybody will get a copy, and I'll leave some extra copies with Colleen at the Council on Aging. But in the back is a whole research, 2 pages of resources, and it gives you the website address for MIT's Age Lab. They've done a lot of great research on driving, how to help a person be a better driver, on living at home independently, what are some good products to help a person, the most recent research on aging and healthy aging, a lot of great information. This one's in particular really focuses in on driving, and it also focuses in on having a conversation about driving, which some folks are really not so comfortable doing, or they may not be comfortable doing. But if you've ever had to talk to a person about their driving because you're concerned about them, you might find that that was maybe not the easiest conversation to have. It might not be the easiest topic to bring up. But if you love that person and you care about them and you want to make sure they stay safe, it's a critical conversation to have. So this little booklet, We Need to Talk, is all about conversations with the older drivers. What to say, when to say it, what some of the myths are, what some of the facts are in terms of older drivers. And probably the first fact that you will read in here is that as a group, older drivers tend to be relatively safe drivers. So as a group, they tend to have a very low crash rate. But as I said, around the age of 75, that begins to change due to medical conditions that affect driving. So let's get back to the medical conditions that may affect a person's driving and may cause them to get into a collision. We went over vision and vision changes. I did not talk yet about reaction time, and that's very, very important to safe driving, as you know. Being able to react in an instant is critical. And the same organization that studied light perception, that's the Institute of Vehicular Safety, they do a lot of crash research. They measured reaction time, and they wanted to see, okay, for a mature driver, what is the difference in reaction time or reflexes? Excuse me. And what they found is that a 20-year-old has about a half a second to 3/4 of a second reaction time. So even though the 20-year-old may not have a lot of driving experience, they may not be the best driver just yet, and they're very vulnerable in terms of crashes. Let me tell you, the teenage driver up to early 20s, the crash rate's very high for them because of inexperience, because of poor decision making. The brain's not fully developed just yet. So that's why the teenagers, younger drivers, tend to get into collisions. The good thing they have going for them is that their eyesight is really good, and their reaction time or their reflexes are really quick. So at age 20, the reaction time for a driver who's around the age of 20, as I said, is about a half a second to 3/4 of a second. For a person who is 60 years old, that reaction time may slow to as much as 4 seconds. That's if there are medical conditions that are affecting the reflexes of that person. So that tells you, you know, in 4 seconds, that could mean life or death. Even in 1 second, you know, depending on the variables of that crash, it could mean life or death. So how do we improve our reaction time? So let me ask you, what are some things that you can do? First of all, let's start when you're behind the wheel. What are some things that you can do to improve your reaction time while driving?
Always be alert.
Yes, excellent. Always pay attention to the driving and always be alert. Don't let your mind be distracted by the radio, what's on the news. Maybe if you listen to a news program in the radio, that's riveting sometimes. The commercials that we hear, all that is to get our attention. I like to just turn the radio off when I'm driving because it does compete for my attention. You're absolutely right. Stay focused on the road because that will improve my reflexes and my reaction time. If I'm distracted and I'm thinking about changing the radio station, that will probably double my reaction time. It will slow it down probably 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 or 10 times. So when you get into your car, have everything set to the way you want it. Have the heat on. Well, today we need the heat, so the heat's on low. On a hot day, you might have the AC on, so you're not having to fiddle with the dashboard controls while you're trying to drive. That's dividing the driver's attention. Yes?
Years ago, I read a car full of people. The driver would easily be distracted if a bunch of people are yakking, talking back and forth, it actually wears the driver down, hearing it.
You are absolutely right. Another great example of how
So I tell people to be calm down, I'm getting tired.
Yeah.
That's
another great piece of advice, that if you're driving and you've got passengers in the vehicle, you have every right to tell them, please, let's not talk about now. I can't be distracted.
I don't mind telling too.
Right, good for you. And because you're the captain of your ship, right? You're the captain of your ship.
I was in the Navy too.
Well, I had a feeling, because that's excellent advice. You need to say, hey, I need to focus on my driving. Can we have that conversation when we get to the restaurant or when we get to our destination?
I'm glad we see eye to eye on that one.
You are absolutely right. I tell you, I drive with, well, I have 2 teenagers now. But when they were younger, they were always, and they buckled in their little car seats and their booster seats in the back. Chat, asking me questions. I had to say, guys, I can't talk right now. I've got to concentrate on my driving. So now they know when we're approaching a rotary or an interchange in a highway or something that looks very congested and very complicated, everything gets quiet. They know. And that's what passengers need to do, to respect the fact that their driver needs to be fully focused on driving. So you're absolutely right. Not only are the dashboard, the radio, the heater controls, and all the options in our vehicle may be a distraction. The GPS, right, the navigation system. So not only are the technological features in a car, they might be a distraction to us, but our friends and our family who we're driving around with may be a distraction to the driver, and they will absolutely slow down that driver's reaction time. Excellent, both excellent points. Some other distractions to a driver. The cell phone. I know mature drivers do not tend to drive while talking on the phone. Most of the mature drivers know better than that. But even if you don't talk on that phone, but yet you keep it next to you, or maybe have it in your bag or have it in the glove compartment, and the volume's on, so you can hear it ring. And you're driving along, and even though you're not going to answer it, you hear that phone ring, and guess what? Your mind starts to think about, oh, who could that be, right? Who could that be? It's 10:30 in the morning, and no one should really be calling me at this hour. So my recommendation, and a lot of safety experts' recommendation is, yes, it's important to have a cell phone with you for emergency purposes, but turn it on silent. Have it turned to silent mode, so you won't even hear that little chirp or that ringtone or anything to really distract you from your driving. So that's important too. Again, it's very important to have a cell phone in case there's an emergency. Don't ever be afraid to, well, of course, get yourself to a safe location where you can do this, but call 911. If there's an emergency, or if you're broken down, you need assistance, don't be afraid to call 911 on that cell phone. Another reason that having a cell phone with you is a good idea, not to chit-chat on it, like I said, not to converse with friends and family while you're driving, absolutely not. But to be able to call 911 if you need it. But also, many cell phones now have a camera. So if you, God forbid, get into a collision, so what some people do, if they've been involved in a collision, of course they'll get to a safe location, pull over to the side of the road, exchange information with that person who hit you, and obviously call the police, have them come. And some people have taken pictures. Take a picture of where the damage is to your vehicle, maybe even take a picture of the other car's license plate, because that is giving you evidence that in case that the insurance company notifies you and says, hey, you're at fault, from the report we got from the other driver, you're all at fault. You have evidence. You can say, oh, wait a minute here, I've got pictures of this incident. This is the angle where I am, and this is how they hit me. It may help you to appeal an insurance claim, or if you're found to be at fault, you have a little bit of evidence. So think of, that's another one of the very few good reasons to have a cell phone with you in the car. Again, not to talk on the phone, not to answer calls. It's illegal to text message here in Massachusetts, excuse me. It's illegal to text while driving. for over 18-year-old drivers. So for the over 18-year-old drivers, that's all of us, it's illegal for us to be texting while driving. For the under 18 crowd, so for our 16-year-old drivers, our 17-year-old drivers, it is illegal for them to literally just be holding a phone while driving. So the law takes it one step further for the teenage drivers. And if a police officer pulls over a teenager who has a phone in their hand, they don't even have to be talking on it. They could be looking at it, admiring it, checking the time, whatever they do, you know. That teenage driver will lose their license. So they have to start from scratch. They have to take all the tests over again. They'll be without a license for a certain amount of time. They have to, when it's all said and done for it, they pay about $1,000 in fees, fines, classes, you name it. So it's very, very strict for the teenage driver because there were so many teenage drivers dying or getting injured in collisions. So the law in Massachusetts does go one step further for the 16 and 17-year-old drivers. So if you have teenagers in your lives and they're under 18, remind them that it is illegal. I don't have my cell phone with me, but it's illegal for them to be behind the wheel and holding a portable device, a phone, an iPad, any sort of portable device in their hand while driving. That's not the case for the rest of us. What is illegal for the rest of us is texting while driving, okay? So distractions, you kind of get the picture. The distracted driver is not going to be able to react quickly because they're distracted. That divided attention, as I said, plays a big role in crashes. For the mature driver, medications may tend to slower reflexes as well. There are lots of medications that tend to cause drowsiness, sleepiness, lightheadedness. You know, there are lots of medications that can possibly cause these side effects that absolutely will cause the driver to get into a collision. You know, and I have to say from personal experience, a relative of mine was diagnosed with high blood pressure. Very common, very treatable. So her doctor prescribed her a new medication, high blood pressure medication. Well, 2 days into that medication, this woman felt really tired. She didn't feel like herself. She just felt very sleepy. She wanted to nap. She just felt very, very tired and knew something was up. So she called the doctor and she said, I don't feel right. I've been taking this new medication for 2 days and I think something's wrong. And so the doctor said, you know what? You might be right. Let's look into this. So they found that in this woman's case, there was an interaction with that high blood pressure medication with another medication that she had been on for quite some time. So the geriatrician said to this woman, stop taking that high blood pressure medication. I'm going to prescribe you same medication but half the dosage. And I want you to take that pill at night. Don't take it first thing in the morning. I don't want you to drive for 7 days, okay? And that came up as a shock to her. But the doctor wanted that prescription, that medication, to get out of her bloodstream and then give it time for the new medication to take effect. So somebody had to go to the pharmacy, get the new prescription for her. She started taking it at night. It was half the dosage. She felt great. She felt back to her normal self. So sometimes there's just a slight adjustment in a prescription, or even adjusting the time of the day, but don't make any of those changes on your own. Always, always, always consult the doctor first, okay? Because it all depends on the medication. And then, long story short, she probably lived for, drove safely for about 15 years on that high blood pressure medication. So if you feel that something is different, maybe you're feeling lightheaded, or maybe you're just feeling a little drowsy, and you've begun taking a new medication, chances are it could be the effects of that medication on your system. And everybody is different. So I saw a hand up. Would you like to ask? Or you? Yes.
I was going to ask you a question. Woman had high BP. What was the other medication? What was the other physical problem?
Oh gosh. I think she had some form of cancer. Yeah, she was very young. She was very young, and I think she was taking a pill form of some sort of a cancer drug. So that's, I don't know. I don't have her entire medical history, but it's important to, now healthcare providers tend to share information much, much better than 15, 20 years ago. There's more integrated care. But it is important, when a doctor prescribes a new medication, you really should show them what other meds that you're on, because there can be that interaction. For some people, it all depends on your chemistry. And the geriatrician was very surprised that this high blood pressure dosage was too much for this woman. But everyone's different, right? So know that. Pay close attention to the first 48 hours if the doctor has prescribed a new medication. Because really, if this woman had not said anything, stayed on that medication, and continued driving and got into a collision, of course she could have killed somebody, first of all. And if she didn't kill somebody, she would have been cited anyway for operating under the influence. Operating under the influence, even though it's a prescription. So I was very surprised to learn that even though a driver is taking a prescription medication, if they get into a collision and the police officer feels that, oh, they're drowsy, they're lightheaded, they're kind of fuzzy, not quite coherent, it could be OUI. That could be an OUI, operating under the influence. Same as if they were driving drunk or driving high or impaired on any drug or alcohol. So know that here in Massachusetts, it's up to me, the driver, it's up to you, the driver, to make sure that you are medically fit to drive. Now, that being said, lots of doctors take matters into their own hands. And lots of doctors are proactive and sit down and say, okay, how's your driving? How are you feeling? In one case, there was a person who had lived with diabetes for 60 years, taking very, very good care of themselves. But there came a day where the effects of the diabetes caused neuropathy in the bottom of her feet. So the doctor did indeed sit down with that person and said, okay, you've lost a lot of sensation on the bottom of your feet. You've got to stop driving. So and that came as a shock. That really did. That came as a shock to this driver. But that doctor was proactive and said, I'm seeing something that is going to affect your driving. Because really, if you can't feel the bottom of your foot, how can you tell what pressure you're putting on that gas pedal? How can you tell if you're hitting the brake or hitting the gas? It's a very, very serious effect of a medical condition. So again, this person had lived with diabetes all their life, and they were very, very careful and very healthy, but that was one effect of the diabetes that caused this doctor to say, you're done driving. And she hasn't driven since. So it's important to know that in Massachusetts, a doctor is not legally obligated to report a driver to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, except in cases of legal blindness. That's really the only medical condition that a doctor is legally obligated to report that person to the registry. In any other medical condition, it's the driver that is legally obligated to report. And every state is different. I'm sure Florida has a different policy, Colorado different policies, but here in Massachusetts, and I brought some information with me on this, it's called Your Health and Driving Safely, and everybody will get a copy, but the first sentence reads, did you know that Massachusetts is a self-reporting state? Massachusetts is a self-reporting state. So what that means is that it is my responsibility as a driver to report to the Registry of Motor Vehicles any medical condition that may affect my driving. So that's important to keep in mind. So, and there are lots of things that may affect a person's driving. So it's good to be proactive and say, hey, you know what, my spouse or a loved one was just diagnosed with XYZ. How is this going to affect their driving? Will it affect their driving? And the registry can tell a person, okay, this is what you need to do in order to stay safe and drive. A lot of people turn to driving evaluations. There is such a thing as a driving eval, and these driving evaluations are done at a lot of hospitals and rehab centers. In fact, right up the street at Haverhill, Whittier Rehab has a fantastic driving evaluation program. Spalding Rehab in Boston, Beth Israel, you name it, Emerson Hospital in Concord. So know that there are lots of hospitals and rehab centers that offer driving evaluations. These are medically based. They're not done at the Registry of Motor Vehicles. A driving eval at a hospital or rehab center is done right at the hospital, right at the rehab center as an outpatient, in an outpatient setting. So the patient goes in, the doctor does have to refer the patient to the hospital and say, hey, I would like you to go get an evaluation. The evaluations evaluate from head to toe. They watch the way the person walks. They measure their strength. They measure the grip of the hands. They measure how quickly, or they time actually, how quickly can that patient move their right foot from right to left, simulating gas and brake. So they measure from foot to toe, as I said, and some of them will take the driver out on a road test and make notes, and there's a licensed driving instructor right there, and it's a full assessment. So know that that is an option for a person if they're interested in doing that. So if you're struggling with a major diagnosis of a medical condition, and you have this person that has this major diagnosis who wants to continue driving, I would recommend that they either go and get a driving evaluation or take a road test at the registry. The registry absolutely does. For $20, we offer what's called a competency road test. Competency road test has to be initiated by a doctor. Okay, so you can see the healthcare community can get involved if there's a driver at risk, and they do get involved, absolutely. So these driving evaluations at hospitals range in cost from anywhere from $100 up to about $500, depending on where you go. So, and again, these are privately managed hospitals and rehab centers. Now, again, the road test at the Registry of Motor Vehicles costs $20, and it's just that, a competency road test. We're not evaluating, neurologically or muscular fitness or anything that the hospital setting would. So that's just the medical side of driving and how to keep yourself safe. So we were talking about reaction time and great advice on how to improve a person's reflexes or reaction time when they're behind the wheel. Limit the distractions, stay attentive to the driving, be mindful of your driving. Limit the chit-chat in the car. If you tend to drive with passengers, limit the chit-chat and keep that attention on your driving, keep that focus on your driving. Here's another way to improve reflexes. Visualize your route. This is kind of a newer bit of advice. But, so before you leave here today, take a moment and in your mind, drive yourself to your next destination. That tends to help a driver be more mindful when they are behind the wheel, because they've thought about, okay, my next destination is going to be Tewksbury. So before I came in here, I sat, I looked at my map, I actually looked at my GPS while the car was parked, and I walked myself through what route I'm going to take. How do I get myself to 133? And then I'm going to go down 133, and then I'm going to get on. So you're visualizing. You're actually taking yourself to that route, to that destination, before you put the key in the ignition. It really helps maintain focus and being mindful of a person's driving. It really does help. So, ways to improve reaction time at home. Okay, so some things you can do at home to improve your reflexes and to improve your reaction time. First of all, foot circles. Believe it or not, foot circles and leg exercises are going to help you react more quickly, because your leg is going to be more limber and fit and strong to be able to move quickly from that gas to the brake. So when you think about it, let's say this is my foot just for visualizing purposes. When we're driving, the foot does a lot of this motion. Flex and extend. Flex and extend. Simulating that you're pressing on the gas, easing off the gas. Pivoting over, pressing on the brake, easing off the brake. That's a very important motion to be able to do. And if I've got a little bit of inflammation in my ankle joint, or I'm suffering from a little bit of arthritis, I'm not going to be as limber as I should be, and my foot may not be able to move from the gas to the brake quickly. So doing some foot circles while you're sitting at home is a very, very good exercise for drivers. It's working the leg muscle, it's working that ankle joint, it is working the calf muscle, the knee joint, the thigh. Believe it or not, when you drive, you're using from your hip down to your toes. It's a very physical activity. And then upper body, we're using our upper body muscles, the arms, the fingers, the wrists, our rotator if we have to turn the wheel. Driving is a very physical activity. So the way to improve your reflexes in terms of stopping more quickly is to really keep moving the lower extremities, doing foot circles. I had a lovely person come up to me after one program, a safe driving program, and I talked about, okay, do some foot circles in your free time at home. And this lovely woman said, our exercise class has us literally write the alphabet with our foot in capital letters. That's amazing. If you can do that, that is a very strong driving leg. So continue that, keep up the good work, and that will help improve your reflexes. All right, so you get the picture. Stretches and exercises can help a person be a better driver and drive later in life. Here's another thing that you can do at home to improve reflexes. And it's really working the brain, kind of getting those synapses firing of the brain. And the BU Health, it was actually the BU Neurology department did a brain health seminar, and it was very, very informative. This was a couple of years ago. And they said, in order to improve memory, brain functioning, which then again will improve my reaction time, break up your routine at home. So if you're always reaching for the refrigerator door or cabinet door with your right hand, for one day, always use your left. So you get yourself out of that habit. So we are creatures of habit. I always reach for things with my right hand. But for one day, just use your left instead. And that's supposed to kind of refire the brain and restart the brain a little bit. Another bit of advice is if you always wear your wristwatch on your left wrist, put it on your right for the day. And you'll find it really, because you know, we're, again, creatures of habit. We look at the wrist, we always have our watch on. Well, if you put it on the other wrist, it's really gonna shake up the brain a little bit and make you think differently. If you know, first thing in the morning, tend to put, you know, a sock on the right leg, sock on the left leg, reverse it. Put the sock on the left leg and the sock on the right leg. So it's, you know, shaking up that routine really tends to jumpstart the brain. Isn't that great? So again, that resource, that information was from Boston University's neurology department, and they did an Alzheimer's brain health program. They also talked about eating the leafy green, dark green, colorful vegetables, that and antioxidants, I'm sure, are all good for brain health. Getting enough rest. There's no, you know, there is no problem with taking a quick cat nap in the afternoon at home. Not behind the wheel, right? That's don't do exercises or whatever behind the wheel. But at home, before, you know, maybe you just had lunch, maybe you're feeling a little tired, but know that you have to go out and do a quick errand. Well, before you go out, take a quick power nap. 10 minutes, 5 minutes. It really does help to refresh the brain. It's not a waste of time. Naps are very, very important for any age because it does help to recharge that brain, and that is really going to help our reflexes, improve our reflexes. And as I said, the exercise classes, any sort of movement will help your body and your brain react more quickly when you're driving. So I talked about 4 functional impairments that lead to collisions. Vision changes, reaction time may slow down, hearing loss may cause collisions, and decreased brain functioning. So those are really the 4 key functional impairments that tend to cause the crash rate for mature drivers to increase. That's really the keys right there. And of course, medications. So most mature drivers, as I said, regulate themselves, and they are very, very careful about their driving. But there are some warning signs that we all need to be aware of, and I will take that, if you wouldn't mind taking one. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Colleen. These are the warning signs of unsafe driving. You're very welcome. There you go. Okay, you're welcome. There are a couple there. Thank you. There should be 2 there. So, some of the warning signs of unsafe driving include having difficulty seeing at night. We talked about that. Finding that those headlights from other vehicles obstruct our sight. Again, that's a warning sign of unsafe driving. Being intimidated by passing vehicles. That again is a red flag. If you are driving and a car passes you and you get startled, that is very dangerous. Very dangerous. You need to have confidence in your driving and also be aware of everything around you. And that's when I said, when we started off and I said, get the big picture, because if we get the big picture, we won't be caught unaware of what's passing us. We'll know. We've got it. We've got it in our rear view mirror. We see that truck. We see that motorcycle back there, and we are going to expect it to come by and pass us if we're on a highway. So being startled or intimidated by a passing vehicle is a red flag. Another red flag is having difficulty following detours or having difficulty seeing the police officer on detail at a construction zone. That is a red flag as well. Now, if you find that you are having difficulty seeing road signs or seeing that police officer on detail, you've got to say something to the eye doctor, really. Now, first, there are a couple things also that you could. In one instance, the town of West Brookfield, their seniors all got together and they provided neon bright green neon gloves for their police officers who worked in town on details. Because the senior citizen said, you know what? We see that police officer, but they're not wearing any reflective material. So we really cannot, determine, are they telling us to stay? Are they telling us to go? Because there's no reflective material whatsoever. So I thought it was quite interesting that the Friends of the Council on Aging in West Brookfield got together and provided the police department with these neon green gloves. And the chief said, you know what? Yes, you've given us these gloves. I will make sure that my police officers, anytime they're on detail, will wear them. And that was a great fix. That really did help. But it's very important. If you find that you're straining to see a road sign, that's a warning sign. That's a red flag, and you've got to talk to the eye doctor. Because the bad news is we're losing depth perception, but the good news is the eye doctor can fix it in most cases. So in most cases of vision loss, the eye doctor has a remedy, but we have to speak up. We have to say something. So moving down the list, having difficulty, I skipped over train crossing signals because we are running low on time. But another question is, do you have difficulty keeping up with the posted speed limit? Again, that's a warning sign of unsafe driving. We talked about that mature drivers have a low crash rate because they tend to regulate themselves to keep themselves safe. Some drivers, though, however, may be over-regulating, driving too slowly. That, again, is a red flag. Using inappropriate speeds is a red flag. We need to be obeying the speed limit, and if the conditions warrant, maybe dropping the speed if it's raining, if the roads are slick. But if everything's good, the sun is out, it's a dry day, the pavement is good, your car is working perfectly, we should be maintaining the speed limit, not going well below it, and of course not going well above the speed limit. The limit is set for a reason, and we need to be doing that limit. If you find that there's a car behind you, they're on your tail, they're on your bumper, they're flashing their headlights, they're very agitated, they want to get around you, what you really should do, if you can, is when it's safe to do so, if you have space to do so, put your blinker on and just pull over to the right and let that car go by you. If it's an aggressive driver, they're going to try any way to get around you. That's okay. I would much rather have that aggressive driver ahead of me than right on my bumper. So again, if you find that there's an aggressive driver behind you, the best thing for you to do is put your blinker on and pull over to the right, let them go by. Don't make eye contact as they go by. Don't engage them in any confrontation or anger. Just keep yourself safe, right? Yeah, I know. Do things.
There's a cop up ahead.
There you go. Well, yeah, I know. A lot of people do hope that, and it does happen. It absolutely does. I try to be empathetic, and I try to say to myself, just to keep myself calm, I feel bad for that person, really, because if they're in that state, if they're in that much of a hurry, something terrible has probably gone wrong in their life, and I just hope they get to where they need to go. And that helps me kind of diffuse my anger, because believe me, I drive the speed limit, and I do get a lot of people on my bumper trying to pass me. That's okay. I'd rather them be ahead of me. But you're right. Maybe there's a cop farther down the road, and they'll get a ticket. But it's not up to us to sort that out. We're just going to keep ourselves safe. But using inappropriate speeds is a red flag. Having difficulty hearing other vehicles. That's important too. Hearing is very, very important to safe driving. Getting drowsy behind the wheel. I just backstepped one time. But getting drowsy behind the wheel, we talked about that. That's dangerous. That's a red flag. And then quickly over onto the second page, do you often get lost on once familiar roads? Again, that's a red flag. If your loved one, if a friend, if you find that they're getting lost, confused while driving, They should not be driving. You really need to say something to them. Or call the doctor. Now, of course, a doctor cannot discuss anything personal in nature with you. But you could certainly pick up the phone and say, I just saw something that really scared me. I think you need to talk to them about their driving. You know, sometimes no one wants to be the bad guy, but somebody has to. Somebody has to if there is a safety issue, if there's a risk. So anyway, moving down the list, parking. Are you unsure of your parking skills? Can you parallel park or park in a straight line? I always back into my parking spot. Always, always, always. Because trying to back out of a parking spot is very dangerous and difficult. Trying to back out of a parking spot into a live zone is very, very difficult. So I tend to, if I cannot find 2 spaces where I can pull through, I will determine what space I'm going to park in, and I will back into it. Always. It just gives me the big picture when I'm ready to leave, and I'm not, trying to see what's over there, what's over there. Speaking of which, what I just did, turning my trunk, that's another really good exercise to do at home. So first exercise was turning our head. Second exercise, I talked about the foot circles. That's good for mature drivers too, to increase the leg strength. Third exercise, trunk rotation. So again, nice time to do this is just, when you first get up, sitting on the side of the bed for a moment, a gentle, gentle stretch to the left, gentle stretch to the right. How does that help your driving? Well, if I do have to back out of a spot, I'll be able to turn and look over my left shoulder and turn and look over my right shoulder. So it's very important to have that range of motion, okay? Last but not least, have friends, family, or even a police officer talk to you about your driving. If they have, you need to listen. Someone is saying that because they love you, they care about you, and they don't want you to get hurt, or even worse, they don't want you to hurt somebody else. So it's important, and that is why in Massachusetts, we give out free ID cards to people who decide to stop driving. Some folks have decided, you know what, I don't want to drive anymore. I've been renewing my license for, a couple years, a couple times now, and I know I'm not going to drive. We can actually swap that license out for a free ID card, as long as that license hasn't expired. If it's expired, we can still swap it out, but it's not going to be free. It's going to be $25. So keep that in mind too. If you've got a loved one who's on the fence, they're thinking about maybe giving up the license, they don't drive anymore, encourage them while that license is still active. Go into the registry, mail it over to the registry, we can swap it out for free. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Handicap parking, know that I have applications for anyone who wishes to apply for a placard, and the application process involves you filling out page 1 and then your healthcare provider filling out page 2. Never ever borrow anyone's placard. That's really a felony, and a person could go to jail for misusing a placard. If a person is found to be borrowing somebody else's placard, and that person who owns the placard isn't with them, the police will come, they'll cite them as placard misuse, they'll give them a $500 fine, they'll take away their license, their driver's license. It's a loss of license. And unfortunately, the placard holder loses their placard. So everybody loses when somebody misuses a placard. It's really important. Don't ever borrow someone's placard without them being with you, right? This is for the disabled person. So if I have a friend who has a disability, who has a placard, I can drive her or him wherever they want to go. And I can park in the handicap spot. I ask for their placard, I hang it from my rear view mirror, and my friend and I get out of the car. It's perfectly legal. Perfectly legal. That's what it's designed for. The handicap placard allows a person with a disability greater mobility, because they don't even need to have a license. They don't need to have a car. They can get a ride from anybody they want to. And that person, whoever that driver is, can park in the handicap spot. That person can also, anyone who has a placard, they can park at a parking meter, and you're exempt from feeding the meter, okay? As long as that meter is on a public road or in a public parking lot, again. So this placard not only allows you to park in a designated handicap spot, but it also allows you to park at a public parking meter, and you are exempt from feeding the meter. This is good anywhere in the world, really, except New York City. That's the only place that does not recognize an out-of-state placard. This has an expiration date of 5 years. Every placard that we at the registry give out has an expiration date of 5 years. You don't have to renew it. We will renew it automatically and mail you a new one about a month before the expiration date. Okay? Any questions? Well, thank you. I've gone a little bit over, I know that, and I apologize. But I do want to thank you so much for coming out. I wish you safe travels, and thank you again to the Georgetown Council on Aging, and Colleen, I appreciate it.
And we will, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
We'll keep some of the information that Michelle's talked about today in the office, and we'll have it available. We've got another question.
Oh, yes, sir, yes.
I have a question about that apartment. Is the person's name on that?
The person's picture and name are on this, but it's generally covered. Yep. Right at the bottom, there's a photo of the person and their name. Most folks choose to cover that up when the placard is hanging from the rearview mirror. But yes, there's a photo and a name, and when a person gets the placard, they also get this little plastic sleeve that covers up their name and their picture. And I forgot to mention one very important thing. Do not drive while this is hanging. That's illegal. So never ever move the vehicle while it's still hanging. It says right on the back of the placard, important, remove before driving vehicle. So.
Well, I've seen people going into shopping centers and they're parking in a handicapped space. Now, I don't know who they are, but they hop out of their car and go in shopping.
Okay, if you suspect, see, we have to keep in mind that not every disability is visible, first of all. But if you do suspect that there is placard abuse or misuse, call 911. And just call 911. Don't take matters into your own hands and confront that person, but call the local police, have them come down to the shopping area, and the police have the authority to ask that person that just got out of the car or they'll wait for that person to come back to the car. And the police have the authority to ask to remove the sleeve, and they can issue that ticket.
Well, what's the sense of having that picture on there if they don't know?
Well, the sense of having the picture is really to identify who the placard holder is. Because if we didn't have a picture on it, how could you tell? Anybody could use this. Yeah, anybody could use this. So this placard has a picture and has a name, and the person better be in that vehicle if they're parked in the handicap spot, or better be getting out of that vehicle.
Would you cover it up?
Pardon me?
Would the picture cover it up?
Oh yeah, the picture, oh yeah, this sleeve covers the picture right up. Yep, most folks will cover their picture for privacy, for privacy issues. Oh yeah.
But, I mean, it's there available, but then if the police need to check, then they can pull it and check.
But if the picture was visible, you could see if the person was...
Right, but then that person's identity is exposed to
Right.
everybody.
Right, their name and their photo are out there for everybody. Yeah.
But that way, I mean, it's there that if there's a question, you have to be able to prove
Right.
that you are either that person or that person is with you. And then that would answer any question of, is indeed this a viable use of the car? So it keeps everybody safe.
It does. It does. Yes.
You mentioned people talking in the car,
Yeah.
how it distracts you. I'm in a stroke. I've had 2 strokes. And a few months ago, I was driving, and my husband, he's a passenger, he asked me about what I heard, something that happened and something that I've been through here. And I tried to relate what I heard here to him, and I couldn't form it all in words to relate it to him while I was driving.
Divided attention. Yes, it's very dangerous.
It's very
Potentially.
hard to explain what had just happened earlier that day.
Sure.
It's
Not while driving. You're absolutely right, because driving is such a complex, it's such a complex skill that it requires the entire brain to be functioning on the task at hand. And basically, we make close to 30 decisions within 1 mile of driving. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Yeah, the Occupational Therapy Association did a study on driving. Within 1 mile of driving, the driver makes close to 30 different decisions. That's why.
It may come back to me. I'll be able to do it. I don't know.
Well, most folks find that it is difficult to process a conversation while driving. That's why the cell phones are such a danger to drivers. It really can be such a distraction to drivers, to some drivers. Now, police officers, emergency vehicle operators, they've been trained to talk on a radio, to communicate while driving. The rest of us haven't really received that training, so it is very difficult. Driving, I'm glad you mentioned that. Driving is a very, very, very complex skill. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, yes. Well, thank you. You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So we'll keep some stuff at hand, and if anybody has any questions, we'll have some of this available in the office and we can share with others. Thank you so much. And we do have some coffee and some goodies out in case you warm up before lunch, after